Let me just take a few minutes. We have about a half an hour, and we want to give most of this time to Sante and his boys to talk about some of the things that are going on the Hill. Most of the stuff that I would have otherwise given hopefully will come out in our presentations this afternoon. If not, then we'll have to supplement that later with an email. But let me tell you about an experience that we had in February and what lessons we learned from that, and a couple of initiatives that led or have come as a result of that. In February, we got a telephone call from the New Mexico Association. Their Attorney General was proposing a rule that would have required dealers to significantly change the way that they would disclose damage. There's a statute in New Mexico that requires any damage above 6% of the value of the vehicle to be disclosed. There's a couple of exceptions to that, and the way that this rule is being crafted would have done some pretty significant damage, no pun intended, or perhaps pun intended there, would have done some damage to the way that dealers could operate their business. We got a call from New Mexico to come and help advocate against the passage of that rule. The New Mexico Association and their dealerships had been working hard towards defeating it. There was a hearing in February that we were able to go out as NIADA and represent the interest of the National Association and give a little bit of a broader perspective as to what was going on or how this would impact the business across the country, not just in the state of New Mexico. Luckily, the Attorney General elected not to pass that rule. The lesson that we learned from that is that there's a lot that we think that we can do at a national level in working with state attorneys general. For those of you that don't know my background, I actually started my career in the Attorney General's office in Ohio. So I've been on the other side of the aisle prosecuting these cases, so to speak, being the regulator, and we've got good working relationships with all 50 state attorneys general. On the heels of that experience that we had with New Mexico and based upon the background that I've got, we decided in August as the national board to join two associations, one that represents the Republican attorneys general across the country and one that represents the Democrat attorneys general across the country. We're going to join these associations, and they are political organizations. We're not going to make any bones about that. They exist to help get their particular candidates elected, but it's an opportunity for us to go into meetings with them and networking opportunities with them where the roles are reversed, so to speak. We're not the one going in to their office as the elected Attorney General and asking for something in particular. They're more or less asking for us not only for money per se, but as membership dues, but more importantly, it's an opportunity for us to engage with them in non-threatening or without asking for a particular use. We are excited about that. We think that that is going to help strengthen the association's relationship with the states. Hopefully it will help you in your state advocacy efforts with your elected attorneys general as issues come from the bottom up, so to speak. And I can tell you that these state attorneys general like to look at national-based issues. They talk with each other all the time. There's working groups that they have amongst their staffs. They collaborate on issues all the time. So as we're looking and working with them at a national level, hopefully the message will get percolated down to their staff from the top down instead of always from the bottom up. So to the extent that there are opportunities for us to help you in your states as you have issues that come up that your Attorney General might be interested in, or you think that your Attorney General is looking to impose some type of regulation or taking some type of an enforcement action that's going to have an adverse impact on the industry and potentially the industry from a national perspective, please give us a call and let us know what we can do to help, and we will certainly do everything that we can to advocate that particular issue on our members' behalf. And just so you know what Attorney General stands for, AG does not stand for Attorney General. AG stands for aspiring governor. So that's, these are political creatures. That's what they're interested in, and we're going to work with them on issues relative to our industry. Does anybody have any questions about that particular relationship and decision by the National Board. Yes, sir.
Yes, who was driving the rule on damage and explosion on the other side?
On the AG side, the Attorney General's office.
All the AG.
It was all the AG. It was 95% of it was the AG and his staff.
Being influenced by an outside group?
I think yes. The answer to that question is yes, but it really was an internal-driven issue. Certainly there are consumer advocates that are in the state of New Mexico, like every other state in the country, and they were certainly interested in pushing that. And I know Derek Markers here. He can give you some better inside baseball on kind of the grassroots that was going on, both on the dealer side and on the consumer advocacy side. Any other questions on RAG and DAGA? Yes, sir. I think the answer to that question is yes, and they had a specific complaint process in place where the dealers felt like they were being taken advantage of because they were being routed to repair facilities that had a connection with particular plaintiffs' attorneys and or the Attorney General's office. So, like I said, I think the New Mexico guys could give you a little bit better inside baseball than I can with respect to that. But okay, like I said, this afternoon we're going to have a lot of regulators come and speak to us. I hope that they address some of the particular updates that I otherwise would have given. We have reserved time in each of those presentations for some Q&A, so I hope that you'll feel confident and comfortable in asking them questions relative to what their agencies are doing and what's going to happen with respect to their regulation and or enforcement. There'll be certain things, obviously, that they can't disclose, but feel free to be direct and blunt with them. We've prepared them, and they're excited to answer those questions to the extent that they can. All right, well, let me turn the time over to Sante and Michael to talk about things that are going on in the Hill.
Thank you, Shaun. Steve said this was going to be a fun-filled afternoon, so I can't think of anything that's more fun than talking about Congress. In the June conference convention out in Vegas, we talked about the safe rental car bill. That's S921, a bill that prohibits rental car companies from selling or leasing cars which are subject to pending recalls. The bill was introduced in the Senate by Senators Schumer and Boxer. Why Schumer? Schumer's from New York. Schumer's a strong advocate of consumer protection issues. And why Boxer? Boxer's from California. And this whole issue started because the two sisters who were killed in an automobile accident driving a rental car for which there had been a pending recall was the genesis of this. Their mother filed a lawsuit and then reached out to members of Congress. The two girls rented a car from Enterprise. Yeah, I know some of you have heard this story before. When they went to pick up the vehicle, they were told they were going to be given an upgrade. Turns out that the upgrade was happening because that was the only vehicle left on the lot. And that vehicle was subject to a recall for a defect having to do with the steering fluid and apparently leakage in the steering fluid mechanism. 2 hours later, they're driving down the highway. Smoke starts emanating from under the hood. Car catches on fire. Rachel, the younger of the two who's driving, loses control of the car. They crash head-on into an 18-wheeler and they both die. Their mother's a lawyer. Their mother reached out to the local congresswoman and to Senator Boxer. She has had a very consistent dialogue with the safety community over the last couple years in pursuing the issue. They ultimately, the parents ended up suing the rental car companies. Case was settled out of course, but she is pursuing legislation along those lines. In June, we reported that the bill, having been introduced, there was a hearing held on the bill in subcommittee, and ultimately the committee marked up the bill, which means they brought it through the amendment process within the Commerce Committee. They didn't take any amendments. They decided that they would report out the bill as introduced and work with the stakeholders pending floor action on the legislation. NIADA opposes the bill. The bill affects some of our members because it defines a rental car company as an entity that has 5 or more vehicles for rent. And so we've been working with NIADA, and the whole focus of their amendment is to carve out small businesses. The irony of the whole situation is that since the bill was introduced, all the major rental car companies have agreed in practice not to do this anymore. Avis, Budget, Enterprise, and et cetera. But that's not enough for the safety advocates. They want something enacted into law. But again, going back to the June convention, nothing has happened since on the legislation. We've been working behind the scenes. We've tried to make the case to the senator's office and to the committee that you basically won your battle. The problem was with the major rental car companies. They've agreed to do it in practice, and that should be it. So we're thinking that there's not going to be further action on the bill in the Senate. There's always a possibility of it coming to the floor, but for that, they would have to get commitment from the majority leader to get the time to do that, and there's not a lot of time to do bills like this on the Senate floor. And on the House side, there's no bill has been introduced in the House. Last Congress, Congresswoman Lois Capps from California introduced the same bill. She represents the district where the deceased girl's parents live, but she has not introduced a bill this Congress. And we've talked to the committees in the House, and there's no interest in doing this legislation, but we're always watching the process and monitoring it and staying close touch with the senator's office as well as the committee staff on any developments with respect to the legislation. I should say we also monitor other legislation which obviously impacts the industry, and there are probably about half dozen bills in Congress now that do that, but we don't see any of them move. But I think given the past involvement of the leadership of the association and efforts in the past on reaching out to other members to talk about various issues, I think we have a good relationship on the Hill. And the other day we got a call from Senator Sanders' office from Vermont, who sits on the Veterans Committee, and his office told us that he was going to introduce a bill that would raise from $18,000 to $30,000 the amount of federal subsidy the government provides for disabled veterans or members in the military who have lost their vehicles because of a natural disaster or a disaster. So I thought that was very good in the sense that, reached out to us in the association to let us know that was happening. Introduced the bill, no co-sponsors, don't know where the bill is going to go, but again, that's another example of something we'll monitor in the process. The only other thing I want to mention is the major highway bill, which was enacted into law 2 years ago, called MAP 21. It provides funds for highways, roads, bridges, mass transit. It does motor carrier issues, but also highway safety issues. Reauthorizes NHTSA, and it is a huge vehicle, and it does provide an opportunity for those who have issues which affect the industry to possibly pursue those issues through that process. It happened 2 years ago when Senator Pryor had a couple of issues that he was pursuing. We were able to fend those off, but we're going to watch that process as it unfolds, especially in the early part of next year. On the House side, they've started hearings on reauthorization. They did those in October. They're going to continue some this month. November and December, they plan to develop principles on what the new bill would look like, and then we're going to start drafting the legislation in January. The Senate's starting hearings this month. So that's something that we'll be watching in the process. We're very much looking forward to our meetings tomorrow on the Hill. Those are good meetings. Those are the right things to do. I mean, we see the meetings as having 3 purposes. Number one, educational, to introduce the association to some key member staff, to tell them about who we are, what we do, and what we're interested in. You'll be very surprised, and you may see it firsthand tomorrow. I've seen it firsthand of how little people on the Hill who work on your issues know about your industry. And so that's going to be a critical part of our presentation tomorrow, and we'll use that in follow-up. The second thing is relationship building, and that's key in Washington. It's getting to know these people and to start a relationship and to build on that relationship and be able to turn to these folks and when we need them or when we have questions and concerns. And we think that's helpful. There are 6 members in the House of Representatives who are either current automobile dealers or former dealers. There's an auto caucus in the House of Representatives made up of 66 members of the House, all of whom in some way or another have a vested interest in automobile issues. So, you know, the audience is there. We want to make sure we educate folks who want to build a relationship, and we want to tell them that we don't have a specific legislative ask at this time, but if something comes our way, we want to double back to them to let them know and would welcome their support. And with that, on the legislative side, I'll turn to Mike, who'll talk about the fundraising side of this association.
Sure. Good afternoon. I'm just going to talk for a few minutes about the NIADA PAC. And hopefully, most if not all of you have seen the brochure that was on the registration table when you first checked in. Hopefully, you've seen this brochure when you were in Vegas for the conference. Tells a little bit about the PAC, also gives you the opportunity to contribute to the PAC. I advise on a number of political action committees. As you know, NIADA has a political action committee. So far, that action committee has participated in 2 events. One was an event back in May, which was sponsored by NAAA. NIADA was a co-sponsor with that event, and there'll be an event tomorrow for Chairman Barton. That will be hosted by NIADA. You know, there's been some past fundraising events. We've reached out to you all at the annual conference in Vegas. Usually we host a short event where we discuss the PAC, the benefits of the PAC, histories of PAC, how they can help, how we use them to drive our issues here in DC. I'd encourage you, if you're in Vegas next year, to participate in that dialogue, and to also get the message out to the other association members, because this is a large association. I mean, you all have close, if not more than 20,000 members. Not a lot of money from each of those members goes a long way to making a strong PAC. There are reasons why an NADA has a multi-million-dollar PAC every year, because they put that to use. I mean, that money doesn't just sit there. That money goes to driving their federal legislative agenda. Most, if not all of you, will be participating in tomorrow's meetings. I can tell you that when we're having those meetings, these phones will be going off asking for money while we're in those meetings. The emails will come across and say, you know, thank you for meeting with the congressman, thank you for meeting with the staff today. Oh, by the way, we're having an event tomorrow night, and would love if the NIADA PAC could contribute towards that member. Also, when you're in those meetings, most of them will take place, some of them will take place in the member's office, and their desk will be covered with paperwork, books, paperwork, files. I can tell you from past experience that there's so much stuff going on in that office, but if I stop for a second and ask that member of Congress, where's their list of people who have contributed to you this congressional year, they know exactly where that list is. Some will even have it on them on their BlackBerry or on their iPhone. Now, we don't make the decision in terms of who you all fund, who you all provide PAC money to. What we do is we make a recommendation in terms of who you should look at, a short list of people, why, what the justification is, and then you all have a protocol in terms of how you decide who gets funded for what amount of money. So again, it is a large association that you all have. This is a necessity in DC. There are members of Congress, you know, very senior members of Congress, who have always done it this way. They say, sometimes they call it pay to play, and that's just how things work here. Again, it's a tool that we all use to help push you all back here in DC, to help raise the level education awareness with members of Congress, so they know that even though we've been in to meet you all, and it's been important enough to do so, that we've followed through with contributing to them, because if they're friends of the association, then we want to make sure that they stay in Congress and they continue to help the association. So again, if you all could just continue to spread the message throughout your colleagues in the association, then I think it just helps to grow the PAC and makes you all stronger here in DC.
Any questions on either the legislative side or the fundraising side?
Sante, there were some hearings that CFPB is on everybody's mind.
Yeah.
There were some hearings I saw in the House last week, a couple weeks ago, about changing the structure of the House and having an inspector general, et cetera. Can you maybe,
The structure of the House.
of the structure of the CFPB, maybe give an update on where you think that may go, if anywhere?
Well, let me say the CFPB is not a favorite with the Republicans. If they had it their way, the Bureau wouldn't even exist today. It was pushed, as you know, by the Democrats, and the Republicans, for the longest time, fought against the leadership of the CFPB, and the Senate side blocked the nomination for the longest time. So if the Republicans had their druthers, they'd go beyond an inspector general. They'd eliminate the agency, but that's not going to happen. You know, in Congress nowadays, it's very difficult to legislate anything. You've seen it. You've seen the reports in the paper. I mean, I've been doing this for, I don't know how many years, 35, 37, and the last two Congresses have been unbelievable. The last one was worse than this one. This one hasn't been much better. But, you know, it's clearly a dysfunctional family. I mean, in the House of Representatives, you know, you really have three parties. You have the traditional Republican Party, you have the Tea Party, and you have the Democratic Party. And nobody gets along with one another. And Boehner can't control his own party. I mean, he'll cut deals with the White House, and he would cut deals with the White House, but for the fact he can't deliver his caucus. You've seen that many, many times. And I don't even know why he wants to be Speaker. I mean, really don't, because he can't be his own person. So you have that situation, and then the lack of communication, deliberately so, I believe, between the various principals, between the House and the Senate, and the Democrats and the White House. So you have something like CFPB, which is controversial. It's controversial, so what do? How do you change the law? I mean, if a bill ever came to the floor that would propose to change something with the CFPB, stuff would come out of the woodworks from all areas, from eliminating it to changing how it's funded to changing its scope and its responsibilities. So, you know, I'm not sure what's going to happen with the future of the agency beyond where it is now, given the current political situation in Congress. And I don't see that situation changing. I mean, I was on the Hill in '94. I was on the Hill starting in '74. But I was on the Hill in '94 where the House went Republican. And, you know, from 1958 to 1994, the House was Democratic. I mean, nobody thought it any differently. I mean, I worked on the Hill from '74 to you know, to the switchover in '94, and it was everybody just assumed this was the way things were in D.C. And, you know, people worked with one another. I mean, I remember Tip O'Neill working with Bob Michael, who was the minority leader from Illinois, and it was like, you know, they worked together to get things done. And they always had this, and I worked on the Transportation Committee, and we always approached everything on a very bipartisan basis. The members used to say, you know, a pothole isn't Democrat or Republican. It is what it is. It's all about quality of life. And so what was driving the Congress back in those days was the devil's in the detail, but you don't have to give up on your principle. You have to work seek the common ground. That's what the art of the legislative process is. That's been my experience. Find the common ground. At the end of the day, you may not get everything you want, but you advance your cause. And that's not what's happening today. Now you're staking out the extremes on both sides. And so nobody's working together to find the common ground. And I think this is a perfect example, that if somebody stepped back and say, look, we need a bureau like this. It makes sense. Look what happened. We need to have it. How can we improve upon it? And that seems to make all the sense in the world. But there seems to be this thing in Congress, and I've seen it, you know, more so, you know, in the last, you know, 5, 6, 7 years, where no matter what the other political side says, automatically it's rejected. It's not good. We disagree with it. And I don't understand that. Never did understand that. It's not the way I worked when I was on the Hill. What's wrong with acknowledging the fact that your brother or sister across the aisle might have a good idea, right? I mean, give me a break. Why can't you work with these people? I think you need more people in Congress who run not on the theme of hope or change, but on the theme of unity. I mean, and that's, you know, and I just don't see that happening up there. And it's very frustrating for us as an association. Unless we want something up there, And so far, we don't, although we talked about a couple of issues yesterday in the Legislative and Regulatory Committee meeting. This isn't bad because we can fend off things, because we can always find someone who has a problem with it, and because it's so difficult getting anything done in the process, they can usually screw it all up, and that's good for us. But if you want to move something along, it's a very challenging situation nowadays, and to me, disappointingly so.
And if I could touch on a point Sante brought up earlier, which is about education, both staffers and members. That's something that is always very challenging to us. He said that, you'd be surprised, and most of you will be tomorrow when you go in the meetings, what little some of these staffers understand about your industry. Some of them will be so forward as to tell you they've never even purchased a car in their lives. Yet they are the ones leading the effort to do damaging things to your industry through pieces of legislation that, you need to know how that whole process works. You would have had to been on the other side of what you all do every day in terms of buying a car to understand what they're writing. At the same time, once you get those staffers educated in terms of understanding the industry, you'd be surprised, but there's a lot of turnover on the Hill. So then a new staffer comes in, and you start that process all over again in terms of educating him to the point of understanding what one or two words can do in a piece of legislation for or against the industry.
See, so much goes on the Hill that one of the shortcomings of it, and I experienced this when I was chief counsel of the committee, is you legislate in a vacuum. You don't know the issues really well. You haven't experienced it. I always used to try to get out in the field to go to agencies that we had jurisdiction over to see firsthand how things work, because otherwise, you write laws, you write language down there, and unless you really know how an entity works or what you're writing affects that entity, it's it's not the best of all worlds. So it is what it is.